Hello everyone, Assalamu alaikum and welcome to AMI Physics class. Today we are going to learn something new. We are going to start a new chapter and we are going to now follow the new syllabus. We are going to include some new chapters which have been included this year or the previous year in the physics book of class 7. So let's not delay anymore and let's begin. So today we are going to start the chapter 3.13 thermal radiation. Please bring out your copies and write the name of the chapter and the number of the chapter. So let us not delay anymore, let's begin. So by the name of the chapter, the first thing comes in mind that what does thermal radiation means. So thermal radiation is a process by which energy is released, in the form of electromagnetic radiation which is emitted by heated surface in all directions. Thermal radiation is a process by which energy is released in the form of electromagnetic radiation which is emitted by heated surface in all directions. The thing here is that thermal radiation is basically an energy released. Thermal radiation is basically an energy which is being released in the form of electromagnetic radiations. Thermal radiation is basically an energy which is being released in the form of electromagnetic radiation which is emitted by heated surface. Means that when you hit something it emits energy, right? So that's called thermal radiation. When you hit something and after it's being heated, first of all, when you heat an object, it gains the heat and later on it releases the heat. So the emission of the releasing of heat is known as thermal radiation here, and it is emitted by heated surface, which means hot surfaces. In other words, we can say hot surfaces, and the radiation is emitted in all directions, not in only specific directions but in all directions. So let me repeat the answer, that thermal radiation is a process by which energy is released in the form of electromagnetic radiation which is emitted by heated surface in all directions. There is one more line left, so let me write that. Before that, I am erasing the first part of the question. So our last paragraph is that, and it directly travels to its point of absorption. For example, the heating of the earth by the sun, which means that the total answer is that thermal radiation is a process by which energy is released, in the form of electromagnetic radiation which is emitted by a heated surface in all directions, and it travels directly to its point of absorption, full stop. It basically says that the process by which any heated object releases heat is known as thermal radiation, which is also known as which is a form of electromagnetic radiation. And one of the prime example is the heating of the earth by the sun. The heating of the earth by the sun is also known as an example of thermal radiation, or also known as example of transfer of energy by radiation. It is also known as an example of transfer of energy by radiation. So there goes our first question about the topic, that we now know what does thermal radiation means. Now let's go forward. Now comes that let us know two uses of thermal radiation in our daily life. Let us know about the two daily uses of thermal radiation in our daily life, which is infrared heaters and thermal imaging. Use thermal radiations to capture and display radiation emitted by objects. Thermal imaging. One of the prime example of thermal radiation, one of the main use of thermal radiation is that infrared heaters. When in the winter we use the heater, right? It gives us it gives us infrared rays, which is a heat wave also, which is a heat wave for which we feel hot in the winter. So one basic use is that infrared heaters use thermal radiation to transmit heat energy through infrared waves. Another example is that, or another use of it is that thermal imaging uses thermal radiations to capture and display radiations emitted by objects, which means that one of the prime example is that CCTV camera. The night vision camera or the CCTV camera uses night vision, right? So this night vision is usually captured by the thermal radiation released by the object. As you know that every human beings or every living thing releases heat, right? So that heat is then captured by the CCTV camera by the thermal imaging, or by using the thermal imaging for the thermal radiation. They give us a clear view, or they give us an appropriate example or appropriate picture that what was it an animal or was it a human. So let me write the uses for you guys. See, I have written the first use of thermal radiation, or the first daily use of thermal radiation, which is infrared heaters uses thermal energy to transmit heat energy through infrared waves, which means that the basic heaters uses the thermal energy to transmit heat energy, which thermal energy to thermal radiation. So it's not thermal energy, it should be thermal radiation. Let me correct it. See, as I said, it should be thermal radiation, not thermal energy. So infrared heaters uses thermal radiation to transmit heat energy through infrared waves. Infrared heaters uses thermal radiation to transmit heat energy through infrared waves. This basically means that the way the regular heaters emits heat by the infrared waves. Infrared heaters uses thermal radiation to transmit heat energy through infrared waves. The waves that helps to pass the radiation, thermal radiation, is known as infrared waves. So please take a screenshot or write it, and let me erase this and write the second use of thermal radiation. So this is our second use of thermal radiation. Thermal imaging uses thermal radiation to capture and display radiation emitted by objects. As previously I said that one of the prime example of thermal imaging is that CCTV camera. CCTV camera, now most of the CCTV cameras have night vision or thermal imaging systems. Thermal imaging systems allows them to see any objects at dark, and the way they use it is that they basically capture the radiation, the heat, the thermal radiation. They basically capture the thermal radiation emitted by any kind of objects. They basically capture the thermal radiation that is being given out by any kind of objects. That way they create an image and they record the thing, or they display the thing as that thing. For example, if a human gives out thermal radiation, the CCTV camera, the radiation will be captured in the CCTV camera, and it will show a human figure. If it is an animal, then it will show an animal figure. That is where the thermal imaging works. So the thermal radiation works. So it is all for today. Read the chapter very carefully. Comment any part in the video. Comment in the video that which part you didn't understand, or which part of the chapter you didn't understand. And the next video will be on that particular chapter or that particular part of the chapter, inshallah. So thank you for being with me. Assalamu alaikum everyone.